A warrior must be like a snake. As a snake takes on the shape of its container, the warrior must adapt his strategy to his opponent and surroundings. As a snake sheds its skin when it needs to grow, so a warrior must cast off outdated perspectives, attitudes, and techniques, constantly upgrading them in order to develop and progress. Like that of the snake, a warrior's attack must be silent and deadly, felt before it is seen. The black mamba is the deadliest snake known to man because it is the fastest, strikes without warning, and inflicts a venom so poisonous that it kills instantaneously. Hi, I'm James Overton. Welcome to Basic Strategic Principles Part 1. As a way of life, Black Mamba teaches that adversity is an inescapable part of our existence. No matter what kind of lifestyle you lead, you're going to have problems to solve. You're going to have obstacles to surmount. You're going to have tasks to complete. Now, it's the resolute acceptance of adversity as an inescapable part of life that most captures the Black Mamba worldview. As far as Black Mamba is concerned, we approach physical combat from a dual perspective. On the one hand, our training gives us a means of self-protection. On the other hand, it gives us an opportunity to hone and practice our strategic skills that we are going to apply to the rest of our life. Because physical combat does capture all the facets, all the aspects of real-life conflicts, whether they're physical or not. Now, when you think of real-life fighting, it's very different from what you encounter in training halls, be it for martial arts or for combat sports. You're not limited to necessarily just one opponent. You can have several. As far as the distance that the fight takes place in, it could start off, if it's empty hand, at leg distance. Then all of a sudden you're grappling. Then all of a sudden you're on the ground. There's no referee to stop. In fact, what we do know is that 90 to 95% of real fights do end up on the ground. There's no weapons limitation. It could start off hand to hand, and all of a sudden a knife appears, or a chain, or a club. Anything goes. So what you find is that in real-life combat, what happens contradicts the training procedures of most training halls, be it for combat sports or for martial arts.
Despite the chaotic and unpredictable nature of physical combat, there are 5 essential variables that are common to almost any physical confrontation situation. These variables are key to formulating strategy, and we refer to them as variables because they can change at any time due to the unpredictable nature of physical combat. Essential variable in formulating a combat strategy is the number and nature of your opposition. How many opponents you are facing? Are they large? Are they trained? Are they fit? What are their intentions? What is their emotional state? Are they inebriated? Are they intoxicated? Are they carrying weapons? Anything that you can ascertain immediately about the number and nature of your opposition is key in formulating the strategy that you will employ against them. Variable in formulating a combat strategy is yourself. Given the time and place of the confrontation, what do you know about your own abilities, about your own physical and emotional state? Now, given that you're facing the opposition that you've just determined in the first variable, how confident did you feel that you will succeed? Black Mamba terrain refers to the 3-dimensional configuration of space where the conflict takes place. In other words, are you in a bar, are you in an elevator? It also refers to the ground. Is it smooth or slippery? It refers to the lighting. Is it a bright sunny day, or is it in a dark alley? It refers to the weather. Is it raining or cold, or is it hot? In other words, anything that has to do with the physical aspects that comprise the combat arena is what we refer to as terrain. Your opponents located in the terrain or 3-dimensional configuration of space. Are you caught between 2 opponents? Are you facing them with your back to a wall? On the same terrain, very different situations are possible given the respective positions of you and your opposition. By evaluating the first 4 variables, that is, the number and nature of the opposition, yourself, the terrain, and your respective positions, we arrive at the final key variable in formulating a combat strategy. According to Clausewitz, any situation of conflict between two opposing parties can be seen in terms of a clash between opposing wills. By will, we refer to your goal or objective, which could be evading or escaping, or injuring, maiming, or even killing your opponent. The nature of your objective, or will have to vary and alter according to how the first four variables in a combat situation change. Okay, now we're going to use the same terrain, the same setting to try to illustrate the five key essential variables in a combat situation. Okay, well, first of all, I have my opponent. Now immediately I can see that he's tall, he's fit, he's larger than myself. Okay, now evaluating myself, I feel confident that I can either fight him or perhaps if things get ugly, try to escape. Now I look at the terrain. What am I faced with? I'm faced with limitations as far as movement this way and that way. I see that if I try to escape over to my left, I have a body of water to deal with. If I were to try to jump, it'd probably put me in a precarious position because my opponent could jump behind me and take advantage of my landing. If I try to jump over this way, I have rocks to contend with. Very similar to the water situation. Although if I fall on the rocks, I may hurt myself and then have him on top of me. Okay, now given our respective positions, if I were on that side and he were on this side, it's obvious that I'd be able to escape without necessarily having to fight him. Now, given all that, my will right now is to face him and to confront him. In other words, to fight. Okay, now all of a sudden my opponent has pulled out a knife. Everything all of a sudden changes. I evaluate him, he's got a knife. Evaluate myself, I don't. So I'm going to try to look around the terrain to see what I can do to try to even the odds, what I can do to try to take advantage of the terrain. My will also has changed now. I know that if I face him with a knife, I'm not going to win. I'm going to lose. So it has to be one of escape. Now I look down here, as you can see, there's a stick. I'm going to make use of the stick to try to open up my way out. Okay? I also know I still want to escape. Even though I have a stick, it's possible that he may be willing to suffer the blows in exchange for stabbing me or cutting me. And that's not something I want to do. We're going to run a different scenario, although the same terrain. I'm in the same position with respect to my opponents, but now I'm facing two opponents. Okay, I assess them right immediately, and I see I have two young, fit opponents, both larger than myself. Evaluating myself, I realize I cannot take out these two guys, so escape has got to be my will, my objective. Okay, again, looking around at the terrain, same thing. I've got water on one side, I've got rocks on the other, and I'm cornered in the back. Okay, I look around also in the terrain, there's nothing that I can avail myself to try to even the odds a little bit in order to achieve my will. However, I try to improvise a weapon by evaluating myself, and I realize, what do I have? I have a belt that I can use.
There are two distinct styles of combat. You have the attrition style, based on toe-to-toe domination of your opponent, using strength and striking power alone. Think of the fighting styles of Jake LaMotta, Joe Foreman, or Joe Frazier. Then you have the maneuver style. Maneuver style is based on rapid, flexible, and opportunistic movement in space and time. Think now of Bruce Lee, Muhammad Ali, Sugar Ray Leonard, or Sugar Ray Robinson. Now, the problem with the attrition style of combat is that, although it can be quite effective, it does subject you to the strength of your opponent. In particular, in situations where your opponent has greater numbers at his disposal, or strength, or even weapons, an attrition style can be quite costly to you. This is why in Black Mamba, we emphasize understanding and mastering the techniques, tactics, and strategies of maneuver-style combat. Now, by maneuvering, we're not just referring to displacing yourself along the terrain. We're referring to also controlling the tempo of the fight, setting the pace, using speed and agility to create an opening in the situation to take advantage of. Our motto, move like a mongoose, strike like a snake, best summarizes this concept. Like a mongoose, a fighter's got to be ready to bob and weave, feint and move, until he creates an opening in his opponent's defense. Once that opening is there, then you're like a snake. You strike fast and deadly, inflict your venom, and move out without getting hit. So it's a proper combination of maneuverability and striking power that's going to give you the greatest effectiveness in a combat situation.
Now we're going to go through 4 different scenarios inside in the same terrain that are they're going to illustrate some of the principles of maneuver combat that we spoke about earlier. Now in the first scenario, I'm facing 2 opponents who are empty-handed, and I am going to be using a knife. Okay, I'm going to be strictly limiting myself primarily to the knife fighting techniques and not using many kicks, many punches, or anything like that. Now, my objective, my will in this first scenario, as in all the others, is going to be getting from this position A, to the other side of the alley, position B. At that point, it's assumed that I have achieved a victory. I've carried forth my objective. I've accomplished my will. In this next scenario, what's going to change is my 2 opponents are now going to have 1 knife each. I'm going to have a stick, because maneuverability alone is not going to cut it. You need something to equalize the strike power, kind of even the odds a little bit. Now we're about to begin our third scenario. The same terrain. Now something's changed somewhat. Now, also part of the terrain is the lighting. Now the sun is at my opponent's back and therefore facing me, in my face, which is going to affect significantly my visibility. Now my opponent is empty-handed, but he's wearing a specially padded protective suit. Now, although this does limit his mobility somewhat, what he represents is the ultimate attrition fighter. And no matter how many blows or what kind of techniques I try to employ against him, I cannot inflict any pain. Therefore, he's just going to keep coming. Nothing I can do can stop him. And once again, my goal, my objective, my will is to get from here and get on the other side of that alley. Begin our 4th and final scenario. As you can see, in this case I'm facing 2 opponents, both with heavily protected body armor. The first opponent on my right, on this side, has all the protected body gear of the previous scenario. The one on the left has a slightly less heavily body armor, which gives him a little bit more maneuverability. Nonetheless, it's the ultimate nightmare for a maneuver fighter, and that's 2 attrition fighters that almost totally block off the passageway. In this case, it's not a matter of not getting hit, it's a matter of damage control.
As you've seen from the previous combat sequences, mobility is an essential aspect of maneuver combat. Now I'm going to introduce to you some basic aspects of mobility. We're going to do stances, guards, footwork, and some defensive maneuvers.
Now, with regard to stance, the first thing that you have to take into account is the position of your feet with respect to one another and also with respect to your opponent. Now, your stance can't be, first of all, too wide. Otherwise, it restricts your mobility forward. And it can't be too narrow this way. You're not walking a tightrope. Otherwise, you have no balance this way, okay, from side to side. So you have to kind of find a comfortable medium between being here and being all the way over here. So somewhere in between, and that's going to vary. It's going to vary because there are no fixed principles in stance. Okay? It's going to vary because depending on what you happen to be doing at the time, your stance may be a little bit more squared off or maybe a little bit more in line. But somewhere between here, okay, and between here is where you want to be. Again, depending on what your objective is. Now, with regard to the position of your lead leg, I'm going to take an orthodox stance just to demonstrate this. Now, the position of your lead leg is going to be determined by the angle of your foot with regard to your opponent. You don't want to have your foot opened up this way, obviously, because it's awkward. You don't want to have it directly in line with your opponent because, first of all, it leaves your groin open to attack. And secondly, it also leaves your knee susceptible to injury. A slight maybe 25, 30 degree angle, maybe even up to 45, although that may be a little bit awkward, is what you're looking for. Something that you find is comfortable. Remember, there are no fixed principles with regard to stance. The only rule you're looking for is mobility and balance. That's what's going to determine if your stance is adequate or not. So we want roughly, say, a 30-degree angle with regard to our opponent or whoever you happen to be facing at the time with your lead leg. Now, as far as your rear leg, okay, one rule, if you want to take a rule, is to try to keep that rear heel off the ground. Okay. Particularly if you want to see some fighters with very good stances and show excellent mobility, look at some fighters, in particular those of the lighter weight category, and you'll see what I mean with regard to keeping that rear heel off the ground. Okay, so you want to keep that rear heel off the ground. Why? Because by being in this position, okay, I'm ready to lunge forward. Okay, I'm already crouched, I'm already ready to spring. Think of a as a cat crouch, ready to jump forward. Okay, now, with regard to the angle, your angle here is going to be a little bit more opened up than what you find with your lead leg. Okay, once again, the relative position of these feet is going to depend on what you happen to be doing at the time. Okay, it's very difficult to bob and weave if you're taking kind of like a Thai boxer stance where your feet are rather squared off. Okay, and if you're here like this, it's very difficult to move side to side. Some happy medium in between. Okay, the next thing you have to be concerned with regard to stance is your legs. Okay, think of this: a straight leg is a broken leg. If I have my leg locked at the knee and I happen to get hit there, it's very easy for someone to dislocate or tear my knee or break my leg. So I want to have this leg flexed, both legs flexed. Again, finding some measure of comfort and mobility. Now, where the weight on my stance is distributed is going to depend on what I happen to be doing. If I happen to be executing a technique that requires moving forward, then I'm going to have a little bit more weight on my lead leg. Okay, if I happen to be trying to move around and get back away, my weight is going to shift backwards. Okay, so moving up from the legs to the central part of the body. Okay, if I'm standing straight up forward like this, it's very difficult for me to tense my abdominals in order to protect my stomach in case I get hit. You can practice this at home. If you stand up straight and get hit, it's a lot harder to protect yourself than if you're bent over like this. Canting forward, it's easier to flex these muscles and take the shots, punches, the kicks, and you will get hit in a conflict situation. Okay. Now, with regard to the shoulders, again, you want the shoulders to be relaxed, but slightly up here. So you're kind of assuming a shape of a turtle shell. Okay, think of yourself going into your shell. Now, the purpose of the shoulder is often to protect the chin from being hit. Finally, what's important in stance is the head. You don't want to have your head straight up like this. You're almost asking someone to hit you in the nose, hit you in the chin. You want to tilt your head forward. And what this does is it helps protect the chin, it helps protect the eyes, the whole mask area. Also, by being in this position, if I have to move forward, like slipping underneath a punch, or bobbing, or weaving, I can't do that very readily from this position. If I'm like this, I'm much more prepared to do that. Or lunge forward and come in for a double leg takedown or an ankle kick or something of that nature, a technique like that. So you want to tilt your head forward. Also, by tilting my head forward, if for some reason I can't parry or block a technique that's going straight to my face, I can take it here on the crown of the head. Again, delivering headbutts is a lot easier if your head is tilted forward. So those are the main things you have to take into account when dealing with stance. Now, when we speak of guards, okay, we can't think of guards in terms of positions where your hands are going to be in to actually deflect or parry or block all the blows. That's not going to happen. Okay, there's certain basic guard positions that we can assume, but what you need is to mix them up, vary them. It's actually the mobility. It's moving out of the way, moving out of range, and then moving in to hit, strike your opponent, take him down, whatever. That's what you're looking for. And, okay, so as far as guards, you can assume a tie guard, which requires the hands kind of up and open like this. Okay, you can assume a low guard with your lead hand down like this. And in a low guard, you usually have this hand up here. This hand is what's going to be doing most of the defensive maneuvering. It's what's going to be parrying, what's going to be blocking over here. Okay. Also, no matter what guard you're in, you tend to block with the elbows the shots that are coming to your body. So I can be blocking shots that are coming directly this way by motions such as these, or if shots are coming this way, I can be blocking them, taking them on the elbow, or striking with the elbow. Okay. So far we've got the tie guard, we've got the low guard. You can have a high guard up here. Again, this hand is up here protecting the chin and using defensive maneuvers, and this is over here. Okay, roughly between the nose and the chin in height. Okay, now the distance of this hand to your body is going to vary. You can have it out here a little bit more, or down, or up in closer. But what's important is to mix everything up. What's important is not to let your opponent know exactly what your intentions are, not to give your opponent a fixed target. If I have my hands throughout the whole fight in one position, no matter what it is, then he knows exactly where the openings are. If I'm moving it about, if I'm here, sometimes I'm over here, sometimes I'm down here, sometimes I'm over here, mixing around. Sometimes I have no guard, whatever, mixing it around. That's what I'm looking for. I'm trying to baffle my opponent so he can't fixate on any given target. Footwork is the essential element of mobility and therefore of maneuver combat. Now, if we take a stance here, okay, we're going to go through the steps of moving forward, moving backward, moving left, moving right, and then kind of vary things up a little bit and expand on that. Now, as you'll see, it's very important to have the weight on the balls of your feet. Okay, that's what's going to allow. That's what you have to move on. That's what's going to give you that floating kind of motion that you'll see in good prize fighters. Now, if I want to move forward, what I want to do is first displace my lead leg in the direction that I want to go. After that, in the equal measure, in order to keep the distance between my legs, keep my stance, I'm going to bring this foot right up in there. Okay, once again, if I'm over here and I want to move forward, it's a simple motion. I don't want to take a step too long like this because I'm caught off balance. What I want to do is try to minimize the time that I'm vulnerable. Anytime that you're moving around, you're vulnerable to attack, whether it's backwards or forwards. So what you want to do is try to be in a guard, a stance position as quickly as possible. Also, because you're not always on smooth terrain, your feet have to be able to adjust to whatever obstacle they may encounter. So moving forward is rather simple. Move forward, move backwards. Okay? 1, 2. 1, 2. Kind of a rule in footwork is you move the foot first that's closest to the direction you want to go. So, you can see how it applies in moving forward. 1, now moving backwards. 2. If I want to go to the left, it's very simple. I move over here, my left foot moves in the direction I want to go, and my right foot covers. In other words, regains my stance position. If I want to move to the right, same thing. Right here. Left, right, forward, backwards. Now, one of the most fundamental things about footwork is to try to circle your opponent. It's control of the space, that plane on which the combat situation is taking place in, that's essential. Think of it as there could be a door behind your opponent, so what you want to do is try to circle around him or around them in order to get to that door. Okay? So you want to kind of circle your opponent. In order to do that, what you're going to do is move, if you're circling to the left, you're going to move your left foot first, move your right, and at the same time pivot slightly on your left foot. If I'm moving to the right, it's kind of the same motion. My right foot covers a little bit more ground and pivots in order to adjust to the angle that I'm facing. Okay? Now, footwork can be a little bit more fancy, but what you're trying to do is to avoid things like this. That's why the kind of rule of thumb is to move the foot that's closest to the direction you want to go first. You won't want to be in situations like this because you're off balance. Okay? So you want to move like this. You want to try to keep a certain amount of balance and stability in your stance no matter what you're doing, whether it's retreating or whether it's going forward, moving to the left, moving to the right, or circling around your opponent. Now, another technique that kind of springs from this is the fade. So we can fade in and fade out. So fade into range in order to execute a technique, and fade out. If you want to fade out of range, just for example, a kick is coming or a punch is coming, and you just want to quickly just get out of way. Now notice how I have to be on the balls of my feet in order to fade. You see this a lot in Cuban boxers in the Olympics. They're excellent at performing this particular drill. Okay? Now I'm just going to mix things up a little bit and move around. You can see just how footwork works. Now the important thing is to also take into account there are no principles. Sometimes my feet are going to be a little bit more lined up. Sometimes they're going to be a little bit more square. Okay? The important thing is mixing things up, being comfortable with covering the space. Now we're going to show you some footwork drills. Well, we refer to it as shadow fighting. Now, what shadow fighting is rather than doing shadow by yourself, you have an opponent that kind of shares the experience with you. The most important thing in shadow fighting isn't to hit your opponent, but rather to practice your fakes, your moves, your defensive maneuvers, and also to practice your footwork. Practice entering in and closing the distance and staying out of range. not be there when your opponent tries to deliver his technique. So if we focus on the head, we have some basic defensive maneuvers. We have slipping, and what slipping is basically allowing the blow, usually a punch, to kind of go by us, just kind of glance by us in order to take advantage of the opening that creates. So as a blow would come this way, I can slip like this, or I can slip over to the other side, depending on how I want to unload, how I want to strike. Okay? Then you have bobbing. Bobbing is simply just ducking underneath it. Ducking underneath the blow as it comes. Then you have something that kind of combines slipping and bobbing. And that's called weaving. So what I do is I slip, I come underneath, come over on the other side. Where I come slip this way, underneath and over on the other side. What's important is to not bend over too much. You don't want to be doing this. It may be all right in boxing, but when you have someone who can kick at you or knee at you, it's not a good idea. Okay? Other defensive maneuvers can be simple. If someone's attacking your leg, just move it out of the way. Just simply move it out of the way. And that's just part of your footwork. As leg kicks come in, you want to sometimes just move them out of the way. Because what happens when your opponent tries to unload a blow, whether it's a punch or a kick or regardless, and you're not there, it breaks their confidence, it's a loss of energy, it messes up their timing. And that's what you want to create. You want to separate your opponent's mind from their body. You want to shatter their game plan. You want to create a situation where they're not sure exactly what can happen. They want to hit you, and all of a sudden you're not there. And then after that, the next step is, as they miss, as you slip that punch, counter attack, come underneath for a takedown. Now, how we're gonna illustrate this is with a drill known as a blocker drill. And what you're gonna see is myself facing an opponent with one blocker, and you're gonna see all these things mixed in. You're going to see as he tries to hit me with the blocker, tries to hit me in the legs, tries to hit me in the body, tries to hit me in the head, you're going to see it all mixed in. You're going to see the footwork, you're going to see the defensive maneuvers, you're going to see how I take advantage of a slip or a bob or a weave and come in to to close the distance and take strategic advantage of the situation. Present you with another drill, a more advanced drill. What you're going to see now is myself facing the same opponent now with two blockers. This is a far more difficult drill. What you're also going to see more than what you saw in the first drill are other kind of defensive techniques. You're going to see parry. Now what a parry is a technique in which you deflect the blow so it glances off your hand. Okay? Then you're also going to see some blocking. You're going to see elbow blocks as I cover my body, the frontal part of my body on the side. You can't always evade the techniques. Sometimes you're going to get hit. Sometimes you're going to have to parry, hopefully. Sometimes you're going to have to block. What you're going to see in this drill is just how difficult it is to not get hit when you're faced with two blockers.
presented with some of the basic strategic principles of Black Mamba. We hope you'll join us for the rest of our series.